Happy Thursday, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Sask Sports Show on ASTV, brought to you by Southwest Terminal. Well, curling is back, and I imagine everyone in Saskatchewan is very excited for that. And with the 2021 Scotties Tournament of Hearts finishing up just last weekend, brings me to my next guest. Tonight, Sherry Anderson, Team Saskatchewan skip of the 2021 Scotties, will be joining me tonight. Sherry and I will be discussing life in the bubble in Calgary, chat about how Team Saskatchewan finished and what her thoughts were, and also talk about what curling was like with no fans. And for the second half of the show, we're going to dive into Sherry's career and look at all the things that she's won through her career. That and much more coming up on the Sask Sports Show. Oh, they changed the music on me. It's like a party in there, but Sherry Anderson, my guest for tonight. How are you doing?
I'm good, JD. Thank you for asking. Yeah, I'm doing okay, recovering a bit from the week in Calgary and enjoying the Briar on TV right now. So,
Well, it must be nice, after you left Calgary to be able to, something's on the TV to watch, and that is the Briar. So that's good to hear. You're keeping yourself busy.
yeah, I haven't been outside too much in the last few days. It's been very nice, but when you got 3 games to watch a day, it kind of occupies most of your time.
Well, as diehard curling fan as you must be, there's no time for breaks.
No, there isn't. Not at this time of the year. Normally at this time of the year, anyway.
Well, I appreciate you being on the show tonight. And to start everything off, I have to ask you, how has life been for you after the bubble in Calgary at the Scotties?
Oh, it's been okay. I mean, it was kind of like any event at the end of it. You're really tired, physically and emotionally. Mentally, I'm just exhausted. Um, and so this time it was no different. You sleep late and it takes you 3 or 4 days to kind of get back in the groove, but um, rested up now. So yeah, it wasn't too much different after the fact. Certainly there in the bubble, it was quite a bit different. It was both better and worse than I thought it was going to be in some respects. To start with, the week was really long to start because we were basically in our hotel rooms, couldn't have any real physical contact with anybody else from our team. So we're video chatting on our phones in the evening and stuff. But so that kind of dragged out the first 2 or 3 days. Once the curling started and we kind of got underway, then it was better than what I had anticipated. So it had both aspects, a little worse than I anticipated and a little bit better. So.
Well, I think everybody in this past year and a half has, gotten used to the words quarantining or, having to restrict yourself from people and all these other words that they've been throwing out. And I have to ask you, you were saying that you were obviously quarantining in Calgary. Did you have to quarantine, like do a soft quarantine a week before you went to Calgary, or was their quarantine just a week?
Well, it was 3 days of self-isolation before we left. Of course, they didn't want us having too much contact with anybody prior to that for about a week or 10 days. But we were able to get together and have some practices. The Saskatchewan government allowed us at the end to actually get together as a team and practice with masks and socially distanced. But so that was kind of nice because it was nice to have at least 1 or 2 team practices. Basically, that's all we had. But it was good just because we hadn't played. And I hadn't really played with my team this fall because I had an injury in my back. So, we had played 4 games in a bonspiel back the beginning of November. So that was a long time ago, and it was nice to refresh as a team and kind of get things gelling as a foursome. So.
And once you got to Calgary, and you did your quarantine, were you, before the Scotties started, was there any practices your team got in before that?
Well, like I said, we had one full team practice one day, and then we had one, most of the team was there another day, and then some partial and a lot of solo to begin with. The first 2 weeks, I think, once they gave us access to curling ice, we had to go solo, and so it was just out there throwing by yourself. So we had, like I said, one decent team practice where we were all together. So a lot of the provinces, I'm not exactly sure what they had. Some of them were fairly tight-lipped, others had restrictions, but how much actual ice time on curling ice they had as teams, I don't know for sure.
And when you got back onto the ice for the first time, with your team before you came to Calgary, and even before the Scotties started, how long did it take for you to kind of get your groove back with, your team and your own game? And even during the Brier too, how many, draws and ends did it take for you and your team to kind of get their groove back?
A while. Yeah, it was a while. Not having curled any competitive games for over 3 months, it takes a little bit mentally to get back in the game. Physically, you don't know how the team's reacting to the setting and everything, so you kind of break into it gently. I think you're seeing that too with the Brier. The first few games I watched on television, they were pretty wide open, not your normal Brier games and start to the game where, they're throwing 2 or 3 guards up there and forcing their opposition to one in the first end. I didn't see that at all in the Brier. So the Scotties was the same thing. You kind of just felt your way, and you didn't want to put any more unnecessary pressure on your team than you had to, because just not having done it for so long.
Well, and I imagine too, that's a hard thing to, like you said, you didn't play since November, like competitively, and then you get thrown into, the Scotties, and you have a few practices here and there, but once your first draw comes, it's like, I imagine it, like you said, it probably took a little while to get the training wheels off. It's a tough situation for anybody to be in.
Yeah, it did, and it was, and for me, the first game I played terrible. I mean, I struggled with the ice and the rocks and draw weight, and then it was just kind of a vicious cycle. And I mean, I had a wide open nose hit for the win, and didn't quite make it. But so it was upsetting, because I think my team played okay. I mean, we had control of that game. So to finish it that way was very disappointing for me, and you don't want to start the competition with a loss. But yeah, it took a little while to get in the groove of things for sure.
But by the end of pool play, it seemed like you and your team did find your groove as you finished, 6-2. You walked out of there first place in Pool B into the championship round, so that must have felt, pretty good after, like you said, maybe the start that you didn't felt like, and felt like you were playing your best curling, which is great.
Yeah, it was good. I mean, I would have liked it to be better. Like I said, to lose a game that you had full control of, especially in a format like that when you take your wins and losses forward. And this year, with only the top 3 teams getting into the playoffs, every win was so important. And yeah, it was unfortunate that we weren't at least 7-1 going into the championship pool. But yeah, I mean, we did okay. It would have been nicer to just be that little bit better.
Okay, and while we're talking about your team, I just did want to, while I have you on here, I do want to give a little shout out to your team. Obviously, I have Skip here, Sherry Anderson, and the third part of that team that was at the Scotties is Nancy Martin. The second is, correct me if I'm wrong, is it Shaylin Kitts?
That's correct.
And then the lead is Brianna Knapp, and their alternate
Brianne Knapp. Yeah.
Oh, Brianne Knapp.
Yeah.
And then your alternate was Amber Holland. So I just want to give a shout out to all 4 of those ladies that were a part of Team Saskatchewan at the Scotties. And like I said, while we're talking about Team Saskatchewan, just wanted to get your thoughts of, some of the things that your team did right, and some of the things that, there is room to improve on.
Well, I thought generally the girls played really well for having it been their first Scotties. I think it would have been a different scenario a little bit with spectators in the stands. All the noise and the hoopla and the cheering and stuff that was missing from this year's Scotties. So it was pretty tame out there as far as contributing to nerves and stuff in games. But I think all in all, they played pretty well for it being their first time there. A few nerves to start with, but really they adjusted pretty quickly. So that was good. Like I said, we would have liked to have done better. You never go to a competition like that and without the expectation that you want to win it. So when you don't, it is disappointing.
Well, and going into the championship round too, you were 6-2, and then you ended up losing all 4 of the games in the championship round. Kind of walk me through that, those games, things that you could have done differently, things that maybe slipped away, and also things that you thought your team did very well in those games as well.
Well, we started in a couple of those games very well. Came out really playing well in the first few games, or the first few ends. The game against Anerson, I missed 2 bad shots in the 5th end, and we gave up a steal or 2. If we get one there, I think we're 2 up, and we're in full control of the game. You do that, and the momentum shifted, and the Anerson team, they just came out really firing in the last half of that game. So that was a big momentum shift. The one game I didn't play that night, we had our chances to win that as well. So, it's like anything, any competition, you have some games where you say, well, geez, we could have won that, or we could have done better there. And that's always the case, sort of, unfortunately. But the next day, who did we play? We played Holman, and I can't remember who we played in the morning draw. But yeah, it was it just shows how consistent you have to be at that level and play 10 good ends. You can't have a couple of stinky ends during that 10 end game, or you're going to get beat. So the consistency maybe wasn't there. Certainly for me, I know it wasn't there. Just not having played in the last 3 months, it showed, that part of it showed for sure.
And like we were talking about earlier, it's so hard to come into a competition, that you haven't played competitive curling in months, and then you get thrown into a situation like that. It's, I don't know how I would be able to handle it. And I felt that you and your team, did as well as anybody that was at that tournament, under the same circumstances that your team was under.
Yeah, well, like I said, I'm happy. Part of me is very happy with how we did. We did okay, but like I said, you don't go to a competition like that just hoping to do okay. You want to be at the top. So there's, unfortunately anymore, there's only one team that really is happy at the end of it all, and that's the winner. So if you've never been there before, I guess it's a little different, but I've been there enough now that I only want to go there to win.
As that was your 10th Scotties appearance, for yourself. Your first one was back in 1994. You want to put that in retrospect? I was 1 year old.
Oh, okay. That just made me feel really old.
Well, I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to make you feel old. I apologize.
No, that's fine. You know, they always make a big deal of anybody that's in that 50-ish range, you know, when you get to a Scotties or a Brier, and they're always talking about Glenn Howard and how old he is, and myself, and I'm sure they probably flashed it on the screen every time I was on the that we were the televised game. But it's okay, you know. I mean, I've had a long career, and I've enjoyed every minute of it, so I can't complain too much that way.
Well, and you've had a very successful career as well, Sherry. You know, like I said in the second part of the show, we're going to go over that and we're going to look at some stats. But right now, we are, it's everybody's favorite time of the Sask Sports Show. It's commercial time. So we're going to be right back. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about Sherry and Team Saskatchewan's experience at the 2021 Scotties Tournament of Hearts. And back here on the Sask Sports Show with Team Saskatchewan skip at the 2021 Scotties Tournament of Hearts, Sherry Anderson. And before the break, we kind of got into a little bit about, you know, the experience of the bubble. And we talked briefly a little bit about, you know, not having fans. But I just really wanted to kind of dive into, you know, how was it for you and your team and even other curlers that were there as well, not having any fans, just having cardboard cutouts?
You know what? For me, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, because when I get in the moment of the game, I don't always hear the crowd noise and all of that anyway. So it wasn't as big of an adjustment for me as I thought it was going to have to be. What I feel bad about is the girls not getting to experience the crowds, because when we go to events, normally in the Bonspiel circuit, most of them are in a curling rink. So you don't have people sitting out on the ice. So you don't get that noise. It's a quiet kind of atmosphere other than the other teams screaming and yelling beside you. But you don't get that same effect, right? So it was too bad for them that they didn't get to experience that. But I mean, generally, it wasn't that much different, not as much as I anticipated going into it.
And was there kind of, did you have to change anything about your game with not having any fans, like, or was it just curling as usual?
No, it was just curling as usual. I was mildly surprised as well for not having curled for so long that sometimes it takes you that extra bit of time to sort of get in the thinking mode of the game and stuff, and it came back pretty quick. Like I said, I was a little bit concerned, but it's kind of like riding a bike. You kind of remember how things are done pretty fast, so that was okay.
Well, yeah, it probably, you know, took you a few times up and down the ice to get your legs back underneath you.
Well, physically, yeah, physically it did. I'm sure the girls were pretty tired. You know, even in practice and stuff, especially when you're practicing solo, you don't practice the sweeping like you do in an actual game, and the intensity of the sweep and stuff. So I know there was a lot of use for the physio department that they had there. I used it a couple of times, and some of my players did as well. But they were kept pretty busy, and I'm sure that's why there was a lot of overused muscles and injuries and stuff like that.
Well, and talking about your team again as well, what was the process of being, I don't know if you were, being chosen to represent Team Saskatchewan at the Scotties when they announced that they were going to do a bubble. Like, how did that whole, I guess, experience go?
The bubble experience itself, or the selection process, or
The
which?
selection process.
Well, the selection process, Curl Sask, they would have sent last year's representative, which was Robin Silbernagel, who we lost to in the final. They would have sent their team, but she changed 2 members of her team from last year. And usually in curling, any changes, if there's one change like we had, we did replace one player, that's usually okay. But if you do 2, then it's a whole different scenario. So that's why we were chosen, because we were the next team with the most points from the previous year, and we were the runner-up from last year. So that's why our team was chosen, as opposed to Robin Silbernagel's team.
And how long have you been curling with your team that was part of the Scotties?
Well, the 4 of us was just this year, but Nancy and I, it's been 3 years, Shaylin 2 years, and Brianne just came on this past fall. So she was the one replacement. So her and I had not played together very many games. Like I said, I didn't play in the fall the first 2 bonspiels, or a bonspiel and a half, that they played because of an injury to my back. So I only got 4 games with her previous to everything being shut down.
Okay. And for each member of your team, like what does each player bring to the team, with skills and, competitive attitude and all those kind of traits of, a professional curler?
Well, they are all very competitive. They're gung ho. They like to curl. They have the passion for the game that I do. They like to practice. They like to improve. They want to learn and get better. And a lot of the game is getting 3 other people that want to do the same thing and have the same goals. That's very important in our sport. And individually, Shaylin is kind of the little fiery spitball out there, and Brianne's a little quieter, but she's still pretty intense. And Nancy's probably the most vocal with the intensity level. But yeah, they all bring their little twist on things during the game, so that's good.
Well, and that makes for exciting curling, watching, the Scotties or the Brier. Just some of the lungs that some of these, girls and guys have on them for screaming and yelling and whoa.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we all get in it at the in the moment at certain times, for sure.
Well, and talking about, we were talking about sweeping and like, I feel that, or I should ask you, in your opinion, do you think that the game has, gone more physically, and that's where people are, they're doing high level conditioning and training to be a professional curler? Do you think that's becoming more popular these days?
Well, I think probably for the last 20 years it's been that way. It's just gotten more and more prevalent, working harder and longer hours. The teams at the very top that get funding and get into the slams, and they're making, maybe paying their bills, and with sponsorship and stuff, making some money. they're pretty much curlers. So they're in the gym and they're on the curling ice. So you're seeing, guys like Brett Gallant off of Brad Gouche's team. I mean, he is just a big bruiser of a guy and a lot of muscle mass. You're not seeing that quite the same in the women's, but they're very fit. They work hard at it, and I think everybody does now to a certain extent. I mean, certainly some are working maybe longer in the gym and have the time, but certainly everybody is doing some sort of physical activity, or else they just can't compete at all.
Well, and and you look at the sweepers too. Like they're sweeping hard, for
Yeah.
10 ends for however many games. That's a lot. That'll take a lot out of you. Like even me, like I know I'm not in very good shape, and doing that just for one end, I would just be, I'd be out. I I I praise those people because they're not sweeping lightly either. They're just giving her,
Yeah.
and just to see that, and I just I'm obviously not, I would say, maybe as experienced in the curling as you are, but I've watching the Brier and the Scotties and tournaments on TV. It's and even like TSN has made a point about doing like specials on the physicality and the conditioning that some of these curlers are getting into. You look at the lead, I think, for Rachel Holman's team. She's I would call her a jacked girl. I can't remember what her name was, but she is very physically fit. That whole team is, obviously, but with the amount of sweeping that she does, like she's in very, very good shape. And like you said, all these curlers are.
Yeah, most all of them are pretty much at the same level. And I have to laugh when people say that curling isn't a physical sport, because I would have them go out there and do what the sweepers do for 10 ends. And it's not just 10 ends a day. I mean, lots of times you're playing 2, sometimes 3 games a day, and you're carrying that over the course of a week or 10 days in these events. So it's not, just go hard for 3 hours and then you can rest up, because you might have to go and turn around and you go grab something to eat, and then you're back on the ice doing it all over again. So they have to be fit. I mean, the skips, I get away with a little less intensity because I don't have to sweep much. But I mean, you still have to be in a certain amount of shape or your body just doesn't take it.
Well, and you brought up a good point. You're playing 2 or 3 games a day over the course. Your team played 12 games over a
Yeah.
course of, I think it was 10 days, 7. Yeah, it was 10 days, 9,
Actually, 8. For
8.
us, it was 8 days, Saturday to Saturday we played. So um, yeah, it's physically exhausting, and it's not just the time you're out on the ice curling the game. You're there for pregame practice. You're there an hour, at least an hour to an hour and 15 minutes before game time. You're on the ice practicing, you're warming up, you're standing around, then the game itself. So, you're on your feet there doing something for at least probably 4 hours at a go, and you do that 2 or 3 times a day. um, it's a lot. There isn't a lot of sports where you're playing that many games in a day for that long and that intense.
Well, and how does, you and your team prepare, is, for playing 3 games in 5 in a day, 2 to 3 games a day? Like what's the preparation, mentally, physically? Like are some people on a strict diet, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I would imagine some are. Certainly, everybody watches what they eat. I mean, you want to be at your best and be able to perform, and you're not going to go and grab a burger and fries before you have to curl. So you have to be careful what you're eating for sure, and hydrating well. And in Calgary, the atmosphere there was so dry that we all had water bottles on both ends of the sheet, and you're constantly drinking, and you constantly feel like you have to drink. So, you're drinking 2 water bottles in a game that hold, 24 ounces each or whatever, and still feeling like you have to drink more at the end of it.
That's a hard thing too, especially drinking all that water. It feels like you're still thirsty after it, and you just drank 2 bottles of water.
Exactly.
And then your skin gets dry too, and then
Yeah.
you get hot, and then it's not the greatest feeling in the world, especially if you're a performance athlete that needs to be at their best. And but
Yeah.
well, Sherry, it's about halfway through the show now, so we're going to take another short commercial break. That's how we get paid here on ASTV and on the Sask Sports Show, is take commercials. So we're going to take a quick commercial. We'll be right back.
Big Systems Beauty College is a little bit unique in respect to the way we teach our program. We don't do so much structure and learning and block teaching. Everybody can move along at the pace that suits them. Everybody can move along at the pace that suits them. If they can move faster, they do so. Therefore, learning everything earlier and getting more practice in all segments of hairstyling as opposed to just being stuck in one section for a certain period of time. So we try to accommodate all the different learning styles.
And I'm back with my guest, Sherry Anderson. She's the Team Saskatchewan skip for the 2021 Scotties Tournament of Hearts. So we have talked about life in the bubble in Calgary. And like I said at the top of the show, we were going to be talking about Sherry's career. So Sherry, you live in Delisle, Saskatchewan now, just right outside of Saskatoon, but you grew up in Prince Albert. That's where you were born, correct?
Well, I was born in the hospital in Prince Albert, but I grew up on a farm, Christopher Lake, North Side area, which is straight north of Prince Albert, between Prince Albert and Waskesiu National Park. That's where I grew up, and then I moved to Prince Albert and spent about 12 or 13 years there. And then 20 some years ago, I moved down here to Delisle.
And kind of what caused you to move to Delisle?
My husband. he
Fair
grew
enough.
up here. He grew up here in Delisle, so we moved and bought a house here. So that was back in the 90s, the decade you were born in, apparently.
I swear I did not try to make you feel old, Sherry. I apologize for that.
That's okay.
Growing up in that area, what got you into curling?
You know what? My whole family curled. I'm the youngest of 9 in my family. My parents both curled, and we grew up 2.5 miles straight west of the Northside curling rink, which was a 2-sheet natural rink when I was a kid. Everybody curled, and so if they were at the curling rink, well, I was the youngest, so I was at the curling rink until I could actually play, and then just evolved from there. Started playing with my siblings and my mom and dad, and we played league play. And back in the day, then you'd have all sorts of open bonspiels around the small towns in the area, because everybody had a 2 or 3 sheet curling rink. So you'd get a team and play in Paddockwood or Meath Park or Deer Ridge or Weirdale or Henryburg or Northside, and that's just what you did when you were young.
When in your, growing up and getting into curling, did you figure out and kind of, that you were very good at it and you wanted to, go professional and play at a higher level and whatnot?
I don't. guess I always liked the competitiveness of curling and the mental strategy part of it and stuff. So, I mean, I always skipped, with the exception of a few years later in life when I played with Stephanie Lawton's team. So I enjoyed that, and so you get a team, and so you want to play in the best competitions, and you go into them, and you start doing okay, and you maybe win a little bit of money, and so you can pay the bills, and then it was like, wow, if we can do that this weekend, well, let's go and do it some other weekend. So and then you start making a schedule in the spring, and you say, look, we're going to go and play in 6 or 8 of these bonspiels, and hopefully make some cash and have some fun doing it. And then you started playing against the best teams in across Canada, and then now you're certainly playing against a lot of international teams. A lot of Oriental teams are coming over, Asian teams, Sweden, the United States. So there's lots of international flair in all the bonspiels now. But it's just fun to go and compete. And like I said, we got to the point where we were making enough money that it wasn't costing us anything out of our pocket. And of course, with the help of sponsors, which is always needed and appreciated. So it was just fun for me. So that's what I always wanted to do. I've done it since I was really young, and this is probably the longest I've ever not curled, was this past 12 months. So it was a long layoff.
And, when COVID hit and, sports were canceled and then they tried to come back in the fall, how did that, like you said, that was the longest you've gone without curling. Did it affect you in any way, mentally? And, because I know with people, sports is everything, and that's their life, and they love sports and like to compete. Did COVID, how did COVID affect you? That's a question I should ask.
Well, JayD, to begin with, it was like, okay, well, we should be able to curl and do it safely, and people need something to do. It's the whole COVID pandemic thing has been very taxing mentally on a lot of people, and I think physical activity is important. So we curled, and then I ended up getting COVID in November. So that was, there was a period there for probably, at least 3 or 4 weeks, even though I wasn't physically sick, that I didn't want to curl. Curling was the farthest thing from my mind because of all the other stuff that was going on with COVID. But yeah, so it affected me in a couple of different ways. And then in the new year, when we had an idea that, okay, if the bubble goes and the Scotties go, that we have a good shot at being that team that's selected. I did have moments of mixed feelings about that, because I wasn't certain, that they'd be able to pull it off safely and not have any cases of COVID inside the bubble. And B, I didn't know if I even wanted to go and compete in that atmosphere. I wasn't certain. So, but my team was so enthusiastic about it. So I couldn't not go. So I had to get in that mind frame, and I did that finally. And the closer I got to it, then I got excited about playing and competing again. But so it was really kind of a roller coaster of emotions, up and down, from the fall to last weekend. So.
Well, and I imagine the first time you stepped on the ice for your first game, it was, you were inside, very, very excited to be back to play the game that you love.
Yeah, I was. I was. It like I said, it came back very quickly, and the competitiveness and the anger when I missed my last shot and we lost, the anger at myself, and all of those emotions that come every winter. So yeah, it came back very fast.
Well, and I didn't say this at the very beginning of the show, but I just wanted to say congratulations to you and your team on how you did play under the circumstances of not playing forever or for months and months on end. And I know the whole province of Saskatchewan was behind you and cheering you on and everything like that. But I just want to say congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We
You're,
did feel the love from all of the people in Saskatchewan sending texts and emails and that sort of stuff. So it was very nice of all the people that did support us and watch through the play downs. So.
Well, I have a little presentation to show you. I've put together a list of all your career stats, your wins, your Scotties appearances, and this is the final result here, Sherry. So I kind of want to go through and talk a little bit about, your past experiences at the Scotties. Obviously, that was your 10th appearance at the Scotties. Your first one was back in '94, where you got bronze. In your first Scotties appearance. So you might as well just start there. What was, the feeling and the excitement and the energy that you were feeling, at your first Scotties? Just tell me about the experience.
Well, again, a lot of different emotions because we went as Team Saskatchewan, and of course, Sandra Schmerler's team was there as Team Canada from Saskatchewan. So very excited and thrilled to have two teams from the province there competing. We ended up playing them our very first game. And of course, TSN usually televises when they have two provinces or two teams from the same province like that. So it was the first time ever on television, and we were really nervous and we played terrible. And of course, we got our butts handed to us by Sandra and the team. So it was a bad way to start, but it was a good lesson. And we ended up, I think, finishing maybe 7-4, and we made the third spot because there was only 3 teams that year that made playoffs. And we had played Connie Laliberte from Manitoba in the round robin. And I actually remember there was one end we were sitting a bunch in the house and she guarded her shot stone, but her guard didn't quite curl enough. And there was 2 guards up there, and I thought, I think there's enough space to get through there. And if we get through the hole, we'll score 5. And it was so exciting because we just got through and we scored 5 and we beat them. But then we ended up playing them in the semifinal, and she came out pretty tough against us, and it was a close game, I think, but we ended up losing. But it was a really good first outing for our first appearance, and we were pretty happy to make playoffs back then when you were only 3 teams in the playoffs in the hunt. So it was good.
Well, and then now we're gonna go to before 2002 Scotties with your silver. We're gonna go to 2001, where you got silver at the Canadian Olympic Curling Trials in Regina. You lost in the final. And I apologize if I'm bringing back old memories and bad memories, but that moment for you, you were in the final. What was going through your head? You had a chance to go to the Olympics in Salt Lake City the next year. What was going through your head?
Nothing really. I mean, nothing that, because you play a bunch of games leading up to that final. So it's not like that's what all you were thinking about, right? So you work your way into it and you get to the final, and it was disappointing because I think we missed some bad shots. We had a bad end midway through the game, and then they sort of controlled things. So it was a very disappointing way to end the tournament. And of course, so much on the line. We got done, and I had a friend phone me, and she said, "Sherry, I feel so bad for you, and you missed out on going to the Olympics." And I said, "Yeah, we missed out on going to the Olympics, and we missed out on funding, and we missed out on this, and we missed out on that." And she goes, "Oh, now I really feel bad for you." So And then that was the same. That was in December. And then we went to the Scotties in 2002. So just 2 months later, and we ended up losing the final. And again, the friend phoned and she said, "Oh, I feel so bad for you. You know, you would have been gone to the Worlds." And I said, "Yeah, and we would have gone back as Team Canada. And we would have got funding, and we would have got this, and we would have got that." And she goes, "Oh, I got to quit phoning you." But
Oh, that's a funny story.
yeah. So I mean, yeah, we lost a couple of bad ones those years, but if you never get to the final, you can't win. You might lose, but you can never win if you don't ever get into the final game. So lessons learned. I mean, who knows? Maybe that prepared me for the seniors and our couple of world championships that we won in what year is it? 2018 and 2019. So who knows?
Well, speaking of those gold medals that you won at the World Senior Curling Championships, that's what I'm going to talk to you after another short commercial break here on the Sask Sports Show. It's everyone's favorite time of the show. When we come back, we're going to break down a little bit more of Sherry's career and then kind of lead out with just some thoughts on the game of curling in Saskatchewan. So stay tuned. And we're back here on the Sask Sports Show on ASTV. I'm with Sherry Anderson, and we before the break we kind of talked a little bit about her her memorable appearances at the Scotties, and she actually mentioned before the break about her 2 gold medals at the World Senior Curling Championships. I know that the umlauts are supposed to be on that O, but is it Oosterson?
Yeah, I don't think we said it properly ever, and I don't even know if I could properly say it. I always said Oosterson, but I know the locals, they probably wouldn't have had an idea of where I was talking about. So, not certain how you say that.
And that was located in Sweden.
Yes.
Okay. So, and just kind of take me through your experiences of, leading up, getting to be able to go to the World Senior Curling Championships, and then coming away with 2 gold medals back-to-back years.
Yeah, it was very exciting. We entered our senior team just kind of to have some fun. I asked Anita Silvernagel from Bigger. I'd curled once with her before in an intermediate event. Patty Hersikorn, my third, and Brenda Gertzen. And I just thought, well, we're all of the age. Why don't we go into the seniors? It could be a lot of fun. So we entered, and the first year we entered and won the provincials. We went to the Canadians, and we ended up losing the final to Colleen Jones. Had a great game. Colleen herself probably curled 122%, I think, that game to beat us. So that was a little disappointing, but we had so much fun. It's just such a great time, and curling against people that I've curled against in the Scotties over the decades. So we went back the next year, managed to win the provincials again, and got to the final of the Canadians and ended up winning. And so then you have to wait. We won, I think, in March, and you wait till the following April to go to your Worlds. So we had actually got back to the Canadians the next year, won our provincials, got to the Canadians, and had won a second Canadian title before we had even gone to our first Worlds. So that was a lot of fun. That game was really wild. We got down 4-0 after, I think, 3 ends or something, and ended up coming back and winning in an extra end. And then So then we went to the Worlds, and not knowing that we were again in the Worlds the next April. So I don't know if it was just because we were just so happy to go once that the second time it was just sort of kind of gravy, you know, to go again. And then last year when COVID hit, we were actually packed our bags. We had won our provincials again. 2 days before we were supposed to leave, we were going to the Canadians in Portage la Prairie. And that, of course, was canceled because of COVID. And we were supposed to go to the Worlds in Kelowna like last April, and that was canceled. So we kind of missed out on a Canadian and a World Championship. So that was disappointing. But hopefully we can get back there. We are scheduled to play again this year, and they are sending us as Team Saskatchewan, both our team and Bruce Cordy's team. And because there was no playoff this spring or this February. So we will be going and competing somewhere in December in the Canadian seniors next year as well, or well, this year, this 2021.
Well, that's exciting. It feels like even, you know, once you jumped on that, you know, the Canadian, I don't want to say, I feel bad when I say this, you know, the senior tour, you know, you've won, you know, you've been able to win golds and win the Canadian Senior Curling Championships 3 years in a row. You know, I feel, you know, and I imagine you feel the same way, that, you know, you're not done quite just yet.
Oh,
you know, with
no.
curling.
No, I'm not. I actually play quite a bit in the fall usually because I do have two teams. I still have I call them my young team, and then I have my senior team. So I do get to play a lot in the fall. I play a lot of weekends, and I enjoy it. I enjoy the friendship and the fun that we have. And I'll tell you, our senior team, we have a lot of fun. We've had a lot of fun over the years at the Canadian and World Championships. And so I think we'd all miss that if we don't get a chance to go and do that. And of course, playing with my younger team, it's a lot of fun as well. It's just a little different atmosphere than the seniors. So I feel very fortunate that I am able to compete in both arenas, and so I'm happy to do that for as long as I can.
And you know, to finish off the segment, you are a 4-time Grand Slam winner on I would say the, you know, on the professional curling circuit. You've won the Casinos of Winnipeg, Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries, Colonial Square, and the Players Championship. So, you know, you have a very a long resume, but a very successful resume. And, you know, through all of your years of curling, and when you started your first Scotties back to 1994 and all the way to now, and I imagine you probably would never trade it in for anything else, for the experiences, the friendships that you've made, and the fun that you've had with, you know, all the teams that you've been on.
Oh, for sure. I wouldn't change too much of it ever. Certainly there's a couple of games, a couple of shots here and there that I would like back, but for the most part, I'm pretty happy with how my curling career has turned out. Like I said, I feel privileged to be able to do it at my age, and I mean, I am well into my 50s. A lot of people can't do it that long because their body won't allow them to. They either have knee problems or back problems, and so I do feel privileged that I am able to do it and curl as much as I do with having two teams. So I feel blessed.
Well, I know we just took a short commercial break. We're going to take another short commercial break, and then we're going to finish out the show talking to Sherry about some of her greatest memories for all the years that she's been in curling, and some more questions that I have up my sleeve for Sherry. So we'll be right back on the Sask Sports Show. back. My name's JayD Haughton. I'm back here with Sherry Anderson on the Sask Sports Show here on ASTV, and kind of finishing up this this interview with Sherry. I have to ask you, just if you got a few, you're right off the top of your head, just kind of give me a few of your greatest moments and memories that you'll probably never forget playing curling. Or curling, not playing curling, but curling.
Curling.
Yeah.
I have a lot of very memorable games. Some of them are wins, some of them are losses. One of the memorable ones, I played Anne Merklinger years ago in Regina. Anne is now heads up the Own the Podium program for curling out in Ontario. A great competitor, and always really enjoyed playing against her. And we were playing in a bonspiel in Regina. I believe it was the semi-final. I don't think it was the final yet, but the winner of the bonspiel got into the Olympic trials that year. And we had such a good game against her. And I throw my last rock. They had the hammer. I think she needed 2 to win. And I put my rock exactly where I wanted it. And I said, well, the only thing she has is like this tiny, thin double. And it's almost a miss, And if she doesn't make it and win the game, but it was such a good game, even though it meant a lot, and the winner got a lot of things, it was just a really memorable game because it was such a well-curled game. So that's one thing I remember. And of course, remember a lot of the highs and lows over the years of winning. Our first World Senior Championship, well, probably our Canadian Championship, was the senior first Canadian we won, was so memorable just because you strive your whole career to win a Canadian Championship. And once we did it, it was pretty satisfying. Felt pretty good. Might have had a glass of wine or 6. So it was fun, but I don't know what other ones would be real memorable. Of course, the pain of losing the Olympic trials final in Regina in front of kind of a hometown crowd. That was a tough one. My very first provincial loss back in 1989 to Michelle Englot, or Michelle Schneider, she was at that time. And it was just, I felt like the world had ended, It was such a letdown. You wanted to win so bad, and we didn't. And I think I had a hard time sleeping for weeks, if not months afterwards, until a buddy of mine said, it's not the end of the world. It's not an arm or a leg. It's just a game. So I've carried that sentiment with me for a lot of decades now, because it is true. I mean, as much as I'm passionate about the game, you got to put things in perspective, right? And especially now with the pandemic and everything, you understand that it is just a sport. I mean, as passionate as we are about it sometimes, it's not the end of the world.
That's what I had to tell myself when they canceled the WHL hockey season about, last year, and then and then I didn't know if they're going to bring it back this year, and I had to tell myself the same thing. But it's talking about all your greatest memories, kind of shed some light, just kind of tell me a little bit, or tell me some of the memories that you've made along the way, curling at the Scotties, and at the Worlds and at Canadian Curling Championships, just all those memories or those friendships that you've made with people that you'll never forget either.
Well, there's a lot of people across the country that I've curled against for a long time. And when you do get a chance to see them again, even at the Scotties this year, not that all of them were competing, but a lot of them were coaching some of the teams. Sherry Madaw, who used to live in the province, and I curled against her, and I curled with one of her players when she left the province. curled against Sherry in women's and the seniors. Joanne Rizzo curled against her. She was playing with Northwest Territories. Heather Netawin, she was coaching one of the teams. Kathy Overton. Of course, Amber Holland came with us as our fifth, curled against her for years. So just a lot of good people that you meet and become friends with over the years. And then, of course, all your teammates. Keep in touch with a lot of them from 20, 30 years ago. I mean, players that I played with in the 90s, and talked to one the other day and when I was going past her neck of the woods. So certainly lots of good people over the years that we've had the chance to play with and meet and play against. So.
Well, that's very good to hear, Sherry. And my last question for you of the night is, will you curl until you win that Scotties?
You know what? I've always said I'm going to curl until I don't feel like I can compete anymore. So I don't know. I'm sure some people are saying hang up your shoes, but I just enjoy the game too much, and I enjoy the competitive nature of the game. If I thought I could go and play Wednesday league play and have as much fun as I do on the competitive circuit, I would do that. But right now, I know for sure I couldn't have as much fun. I would probably have to hang up my boots completely, and I don't want to do that. So for the next unforeseen future, I will continue to curl, and if that means cutting it back to seniors in the near future, maybe I'll do that. I don't know, but we'll see how the body holds up.
Well, Sherry, I really appreciate you jumping on the show tonight, and again, I just wanted to say congratulations at the 2021 Scotties.
Thank you.
You're very welcome, and it was great to talk to you and get to know you and learn a lot about your curling career, and talking about this year's Scotties and previous Scotties as well. So again, I say thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
And that concludes our show here on the Sask Sports Show. We make sure to tune in next Thursday for another episode of the show. At 5 p.m. Central Time. You can catch any episode of the Sask Sports Show on ASTV's Facebook, YouTube, and at astvproductions.com as well. So I really hope you guys enjoyed the show tonight with Sherry Anderson, and I will be back next week for another show with another guest, and I cannot wait to see all of you, and also have a good night.